Hi guys, my name's Subtutor, I'm the man on the Silver Mountain, and welcome back. Now today, this video is kind of part one of a couple of videos that I want to make this week. And all of it revolves around this Cambridge Analytica stuff that's been in the news lately. I want to go into the Cambridge Analytica stuff in the next video that will probably come out tomorrow if all goes well. But today I wanted to actually talk about the profiling method that they use, because I feel like this is where there are a couple of different elements involved that complicate parts of the situation beyond just the point of Cambridge Analytica seeming to be quite a shady company in and of themselves. When you've got their CEO going, oh, well, these politicians that have questioned us and all that kind of thing, they're not technical people. They don't know even what they're talking about or what they're looking for. There is an element of truth to that, because the kind of profiling side in media, what most people associate with it is your FBI profilers psychologically profiling someone and getting into their head in such a way that they catch the bad guy. But there it's all, oh, we're going to go into their flat, look at their room, pick out all the patterns. And there is an element of truth to that in profiling in general. But in regards to the psychological profiling that Cambridge Analytica actually use, it's based around the Big Five model, otherwise known as the 5 factors model, which is very similar to DISC. In fact, it takes into account all of the things that DISC does to one extent or another, and then also in where DISC you have 3 different graphs based on situation, including the last graph that you get on a report, which is your stress response graph. Basically, the Big Five model takes that stress response and rolls it into the numbers for everything else. So Big Five is kind of potentially, especially when you're dealing with a very large amount of data, because you get one graph for each person and it includes that stress response and stuff like that. It allows for much quicker but far less in-depth kind of appraisal of each individual that's part of your data set, whilst with DISC, because you've got those 3 distinct graphs based on situation, those are kind of maybe not so great for huge data sets of people. So I can understand why Cambridge Analytica use this rather than something like DISC or Myers-Briggs. Myers-Briggs is just horrible anyway, to one extent or another. So, it has a lot more limitations and shaky parts to it than DISC or the Big Five or a couple of others that I've come across. Or at least, such is my opinion. I'm sure there are other people that would disagree. But as a result, though, I wanted to go through the 5 areas that it measures, because they are potentially slightly different and they don't divide them in the same way. It's more these 5 elements orbiting the center that is personality, or combining to become the center that is your personality. So first off, openness to experience is the first one, where it's a measure of how consistent and cautious or kind of actively curious and inventive, exploratory that you are. So this, to an extent, is kind of that element of are you going to stray outside the lines? Do the lines even matter to you? All that kind of thing. This is an element of the kind of task focused versus people focused side of things, but also a kind of mix of the extraversion and the introversion. But it's a case of this allows for measuring of things like shyness as part of this as well, to a degree. But for instance, the opposing elements of this on DISC would probably be an S-type person or a C-type person being more cautious, being more consistent, being more kind of stuck in what they're doing, or compared to a D or an I-type person who is much more willing to ignore the rules, move outside of them, actively seek out these new ways of doing things, or new people to talk to, and stuff like that. The next one is conscientiousness, which is if you're efficient and organized, or easygoing and careless. Again, this is kind of another split in the same direction, where you've got the say compliant people, C-type personalities from DISC, who are more looking towards being organized, following their process, and then kind of flip the opposite. So you've got a task-focused, active personality, people-focused, active personality rather, and they're going to be much more easygoing. They're not going to care about the rules so much. They're going to be more interested in people, but they're still not going to be completely interested in people as like a main source of guidelines in a specific way. You know, they're not looking for security. They're looking for fun. They're looking for that kind of energized environment. And so, you know, there's that. Then we've got the extraversion side of things, whereby you're either extroverted or introverted, along the lines of what we were talking about before. You've got agreeableness, which is something I've talked about before, but not something that I've really highlighted in its own video. But agreeableness is basically your task-focused versus people-focused. So you've got, you know, your people with high agreeableness are more likely to be friendly, compassionate, interested in talking to others, whilst the other side of things, the more likely to be people on low agreeableness are more likely to be challenging or detached or direct, which again kind of fairly happily breaks down into the task-focused, people-focused. If you've got I-type people on the people-focused side who are friendly, and then you've got the S-type people who are compassionate, you've got the challenging people who are D-types, and then you've got the detached people who are C-types. You know, that's a way to look at it. It's not completely accurate, but it exemplifies it for what we're talking about here. And now here we've got neuroticism, which is the last of these metrics that they measure, which excuse me, which has this measure of how prone you are to psychological stress. You know, how secure and confident and self-assured you are compared to how sensitive or nervous you are in various situations. So again, looking at this, it gives you these 5 metrics. It tells you how extreme or limited the traits are in different people. And so at a glance, potentially you can tell a lot of information about that person, how they would react to something. Pair that with then, after you've been able to kind of create this profile, considering with Cambridge Analytica, again, they had a huge amount, absolutely huge amount of data that had been mined from Facebook and from other such places, from social media generally. And with that amount of data, you can not only go, right, well, we've now made this profile, then you can also see where those people are looking for their information, where they're sharing it from, who they're sharing it to, and so on and so forth. You can use that then to apply the model into that situation. So taking an example from me with coaching, if I've got someone who's sat there who's a D-type personality like myself, then the way I'm going to deal with them is going to be very direct, very focused on the goal, not on how we get there. How we get there is something that they just need to go through, but we need to get to the goal. So every time, to make sure that they're committed, I'm going to be talking about the result, because that's what they care about. You know, they're result-focused individuals. They don't care about necessarily how they get there. They don't necessarily care about the specifics of kind of how they're going to get over every single obstacle. Important to go through so that they can, but not the thing that energizes them, not the thing that gets them on board with the plan. So if you spell out the plan, fine, but then making sure that you're focused on the goal overall, that when you're talking, you're being efficient, you're being direct, you're being to the point, and not just wasting time. Because if you're wasting time, then they're going to get bored, they're going to get tired of it. It's going to be a detraction from the thing that they want. And so, that's something that I can pay attention to. If I've got someone that's an I-type personality, then again, they're going to be looking to influence and be influenced. They're going to be afraid of things like rejection more so than anything else. Being ignored, being rejected is one of the biggest fears, biggest upsets for an I-type personality. In which case, I'm not going to be dismissive. There are going to be some people who would appreciate me just dismissing ideas outright when they come to me and they say, and they can contradict themselves, or they suggest stuff that they have already said that they can't do, and that they've provided evidence for why they can't do it rather than why they can. And so some people are going to want me to be direct and just call them on their crap. An I-type personality is more likely to take that to heart. They're more likely to be offended by it. They're more likely to curl up in a ball and not want to talk to me anymore. Because it's potentially going to be received as me rejecting their idea, and as an extension rejecting them. It's something that I can take into account when it comes to dealing with that person. So looking at this means that they, with this model in mind, they can go and apply what they learn here in various different ways just to communicate in the most effective way to those people. Is that all they learn, though? Simple answer, no. One of the things that my the instructor, when I did my accreditation for DISC, said to all of us was, when you sit down with a client, the thing to do is not to go through the report. Don't just read the report, because reading the report is something they can do in their own time. You should flick straight to the graphs and read the data straight off the graphs, and then reference what they have done before, because it puts it into context, and it puts it into context better than the report will do just by itself. I could write on a report all kinds of different things, but it's all I think it's a 12-page report usually, and so it's a case of there's a lot of information and a lot of context there that a lot of people might not go through. But going straight to, I can get all of the same information from those graphs and relate it to how that person interacts with the world and how they see themselves, how they see, how they feel other people see them, and how they react under stress. And I could apply that to the discussions that I've had with that person beforehand, things that I've observed, and so I can kind of give them some more context, give them a better idea of what they're doing, of how they're working. And so in that regard, for instance, there are other things that each metric indicates. For instance, the higher someone's S trait is in DISC, the more slowly and cautiously they are likely to work through things. You put some work in front of them, someone with a high S, they're looking for stability, they're looking for security. What does security mean? It means taking their time over it and making sure they get it right, making sure that they get it to the approved standard that others have set for them. They're not going to just jump in, get it done. They're not going to flounder. They're going to act, but they're going to act more slowly. And this can lead to kind of analysis paralysis at a point. People can overthink and get stuck. But again, for the most part, the people who have, like myself, a very low S trait in DISC, which in regards to this, I guess, would be a combination of kind of a low neuroticism with with very much more in the way of a combination of openness and a low conscientiousness as well, maybe, I'm guessing. And so as a result, it's like this combination of traits allows them to go, yeah, okay, this person is going to require more than just this other person. This other person, if they see a thing and it adds up with their mindset, follows their logic, then, a C-type personality, someone that's compliant, has their own internalized rule set. You put some information in front of them that adds up to their worldview, they're not going to question it. They're going to take it on board, and they're going to just add it to the things that it makes sense to with them. It's going to just pile up. So, fake news for those people, as long as it seems believable, or as long as it adds up to their own internal set of rules and things, which you've already gained from this profile and from having all the data on their social media. You've been able to observe that. you can tailor very specific messaging towards that person. And as we saw in Darren Brown's The Push, when I did my video on that, and when, I'd like to think that you guys went and actually watched it, because it's a good watch. If you haven't yet, go do. But there are a lot of people in the population that are highly susceptible to suggestion, just little suggestions, to the extent that you can just push people just a little bit and just nudge them into a tough place, and they will go out of their way to be subservient, to do as they're told, to do what the way that they're instructed. And in the end, in the most extreme examples that came out of Darren Brown's show, they literally attempted to kill a person. And, that's a pretty significant step outside of what those people would usually do. It was a kind of experience in realization of their own limits for those people, according to what they said at the end in the kind of debriefing interviews. But again, you're not asking someone to kill someone. You're asking someone to maybe vote a different way, or you're asking someone to support a different product, or support a different person. And that doesn't require anywhere near as much of a push or as much intensity on that person at all. You just need a little bit of a nudge, just a little bit of a nudge and a poke in the right direction. And as long as you do it in the right way, they're going to. Again, this is where being curious, asking questions, even if you think it adds up, even if you think it makes sense, clarify, double check, make sure it all works out. Because otherwise, people who have these tools at their disposal are likely to get into your head, under your skin, into your information, and be able to tell all manner of things about you. Specifics of how quickly you are likely to work through something, how much extra information you need, how many times it needs to be reinforced. A D-type personality who's more curious or aggressive in their outlook, someone who is always looking for more information, you're going to have to pile on that extra information in various different places to kind of influence that individual. And even then, that might still not work, depending on how kind of forthright and focused they are on finding out the truth, if that is their goal. Whilst an I-type personality, you have the right friends resharing or the right other friends influencing them, then that I-type personality is going to then try and influence other people in the same way, potentially causing a much bigger spread as well. It's going to be a kind of ripple effect in that particular situation, but all it requires is seeding things in the right place, and you can see who you follow, who you pay most attention to, all from your social media stats. I know that there are a few friends that post things on my on Facebook that pop up in my feed that I like more than others. And it's a case of going, if someone took a look at my data, they'd probably go, right, well, we need to affect this friend and this friend and this friend to make sure that then this person is influenced and pressured in the right way. Like, one of the things that has been said numerous times was, oh, well, such and such a campaign fired these people, such and such a campaign terminated the contract with these individuals. It's like, yeah, fine, but we also don't know how far those campaigns were willing to go. If Cambridge Analytica said, well, you need to do X, Y, and Z, we need to try and target very specific things on each of these people, we need to try and make sure that we have certain individuals impacted, certain other groups that aren't going to buy into this marginalized, we need to use these psychographics to kind of segregate the population into how we're going to tackle each individual group. And there are potentially going to be a lot of different groups, and that's what we need to do. If, say, the Ted Cruz campaign, that was one of the first ones that went, no, we're not actually interested anymore, go away. If they went, well, that's a lot of work, and that's a lot of different things, and that's potentially a lot of money, I don't think we're going to go into that. We'll just stick with what we're doing at the moment. Cambridge Analytica goes, yeah, okay, and then they don't see the results overall because they've not flowed through the whole process. You know, they've not used everything that they've had at their disposal. Same with the Trump campaign. Same with whoever else. But also, as per the footage from some of the other stuff that's come out from Channel 4 especially, it seems to suggest that the company was kind of shady in the first place. So in many different ways and many different ways they manage their affairs. So, you know, using this model in that way to not just be appropriate, not just help people with it, but to poke holes in everyone's different personalities, lump all of the same weaknesses together and then attack them. You know, I've talked about DISC, I've talked about profiling as a way to further insight, to help you understand you better, so that then you can tailor your situation and the goals and the plans and the things that we want to work on together as coach and client, you know, so that we can make all of those things work better for you. Yeah, there's no point in trying to go off-roading if your car can't handle it. There's no point in trying to get you to follow through on a plan if it's not a plan that you are inclined towards or that would suit you particularly well. Yeah, that's where I use profiling in my coaching day to day. But here they're using it as an aggressive tool to not just expose people's internal workings for the sake of insight, for the sake of improving that person's situation, but as a means of literally targeting and attacking those individuals to manipulate them into getting them to do what they want. And, you know, that's why I wanted to go through the model first, because when I go through the situation around Cambridge Analytica and what's been going on with them and some of the information that's come out, I wanted all of this to be kind of fresh in your mind and available in another video, so that you guys could come take a look at it, have me go through it and explain how it's used, how it's being used, and whatever else. So, you know, what are your thoughts on profiling? Have you ever had a profile done, even just through work? You know, Myers-Briggs or through any other kind of pattern? I know that there's one that goes around which is really weird, which has different coloured hats, which I know people have done, and I managed to dodge that one. But it seemed to be kind of an offshoot of Myers-Briggs, and it seemed really weird to me when I took a look at some of the literature around it a while ago. But, you know, tell me your experiences, guys. I'm interested to know, because obviously I've got trained and accredited and all the rest of it as a profiler, and now I've come to take a look at this stuff, and it's just like, yeah, this is people using these things that are tools to help in a way to potentially entirely undermine people. You know, it's as I've said before, awareness is key to keeping yourself safe, especially from people that would manipulate you. But here we're talking about you being manipulated without even realize you're being manipulated, because of the very specific way that things are being kind of shunted in your direction to go past, you know, to slip through your blind spots, to hit your sensitive areas, to push all the right buttons to get you basically programmed in a way to do what these people want. So, you know, this worries me. You know, this is profilers gone bad. You know, I realised that as an individual, I try not to profile people by eye as I just walk past them on the street, because there are tells, there are indicators of whether someone is this type of personality or that type of personality to an extent. You know, obviously one of the more obvious things is whether or not someone's an extrovert or an introvert. You know, it's something that kind of sets them apart as to what their dominant personality kind of area is. But otherwise it's you know, little bits and pieces here and there. But I try hard not to profile people, you know, friends, relatives, stuff like that. Sometimes I do, but often being cracked open and analysed directly is something that puts people on edge. People don't like it, rather unsurprisingly, because it lays bare all of what makes up that person. And so I try not to do it, and also because I could be wrong. Without the data, without the metrics, without people going through and filling out the matrix so that I can then kind of generate the report, at the very least see the graphs to see how it all adds up. It's a case of going, like, everything that I suggest a person could be to that person. You know, I've got a fairly good track record of being at least somewhat accurate, at least fairly accurate, to be fair to myself. But I don't know with any amount of certainty until I've actually got the numbers in front of me. And so with that, it's like I can make assumptions, I can make guesses, I can make judgments, I can have evidence to support those judgments, but I don't know with 100% certainty when just doing that by eye. It can give me insight when dealing with someone that I've only just met, you know, going to a party and interacting with someone for the very first time, having that little bit of extra insight into what they might be and how I could kind of tailor myself to being better received is nice. It's useful. But at the same time, I'm not going to start twisting and manipulating people with it because it makes no sense. I'm not going to be trying to dig into those people to find a way to turn them and bend them to my will. You know, mastermind, evil villain level stuff. But, you know, here it's this slightly different but still, you know, similar profiling system is being used as kind of the doorway like a way of blowing a gate open to get inside someone's defenses to then take over. And it worries me, because obviously there are people that rely on me for coaching. There are people that rely on me for this kind of service. And having individuals kind of misuse the methodology and use it in a way that is, quite frankly, very, very negative. You know, it's a case of going, like, how are we going to discern whether or not someone is using it positively or negatively? Someone using this just to create kind of overall set of demographics to see what kind of people are in what kind of professions and stuff like that, that doesn't bother me, because potentially it means that then training programs and things could be better tailored to those people to help them succeed. But doing it so that your candidate that's paid you more gets more votes, well, firstly, all of these things should be about fact and policy and what people are going to do, because then you can hold them accountable. It shouldn't be about emotion. It shouldn't be about getting behind what's up here and poking around it until people do what you want. You know, that's very much a perversion of the kind of democratic process and the systems that sit in place. But I don't know. Anyway, I've started rambling, so I'm gonna call it quits here, guys, and I'll talk about Cambridge Analytica and stuff tomorrow. So please tune in for that one if you're interested. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the video tomorrow. Take care. Thank you very much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video or found it interesting, then please drop us a like, share this video, and subscribe for more. And I'll see you in the video tomorrow. Take care.